Hey everyone, and welcome to Almost Cancelled. I am Peter, and I'm going to be talking about Big Little Lies Season 1, Episode 3. It's called Living the Dream. So full spoilers for the episode, as always, of course. This episode was very interesting to me. Mainly the Celeste and Perry stuff. Really stuck out to me in this one. Obviously, I spoke a lot about them last episode, but their stuff in this episode is that they have another altercation. He grabs her by the neck early on. He gets mad at her for not telling him about the Disney on Ice. That he's mad that he can't go. He's mad that it was never discussed with him. So he gets mad and grabs her neck. And she does get angry this time. It's a little bit different from last time, where she does get angry and says she'll leave him. She has like a, she I don't know if I'd quite call it defending herself, but she does kind of react to it in a way this time. And then we have a very kind of like typical scene that comes after this, where he comes over with this new, very expensive necklace, and she's just getting out of the shower. He puts it on her, and it gets kind of sexual again. The idea being, even though it wasn't instant like last time, that again the fight turned into sex by the end of it, and that's very much where he was going with it. That's how he kind of tried to wrap up in a bow. But they did say last episode they were going to therapy, and I think that's where this gets really interesting in this episode, is where they go to the therapy and they sit down, and this is one of the best scenes of this show so far, and it really surprised me. Not that I was surprised it was good, because the show's been very high quality in terms of its direction, in terms of its performances, both of which are really on top form here. But the big thing here for me was they sit down, and Perry is talking to the therapist. The therapist is asking questions. She's kind of poking at things, hoping that they'll open up and give her some answers. And Perry, like they start talking about fighting a lot. And when she asks Perry, why that is, he starts talking about how he's worried that his wife will leave him for someone. That if she got mad at him and left, there'd be men lining up around the corner for him. And during this part of the scene, I was really into Nicole Kidman's performance. Not that he was doing bad himself, but there was this look in her face of disgust, where she clearly thought this was complete bullshit, that this was all made up, that this was the made up story for therapy, and it was working really well in that context for me. And I really thought it was what it was building up to was Nicole Kidman, Celeste, kind of finally saying, no, it's not just emotional verbal fighting, it's physical. He does physically lash out. And I was actually really shocked when he did that first. I was shocked that when he kind of went down the path of eventually owning up and admitting that he does lash out and that he does hit her, it took me by surprise. I did not see that coming. And the cynical part of me honestly thinks that he's still almost... he's playing a very smart game almost. It's like, I think he realised in the scene that if he didn't admit to it in some level, if he didn't actually acknowledge that that part of the relationship exists, that it would just lead to me, this is still him in a way trying to control the situation, as bizarre as that sounds. Because as much as he's being honest, I think a lot of his reasons beforehand were bullshit. They felt kind of made up for therapy, like I said, but him admitting to it, having some truth in there along with everything else, and then Celeste kind of admitting that she also sometimes lashes out back. Again, trying to take some of the blame so it's not just on him, which is bullshit again. Like he lashes out, he gets angry constantly, and she's in fear. It was kind of like how last episode I said that she almost just gave consent before the sex scene just so that she wouldn't have to admit afterwards that it was sexual assault. I think in this therapy scene again, we see almost the same thing, where she tries to give herself some of the blame to make it look more even between them, because admitting that she's in an abusive relationship primarily as the victim is something that I don't think she can admit to herself. And so the performances during this scene were fantastic, and I liked the direction because it made a point of sticking on this 1-2 shot. It was cutting back and forth with the therapist. It wasn't like a one-er per se. But every time it cut back to the couple on the couch, it was the same 2-shot for a long, long, long time. And that's why I'm saying, during when he's admitting, or he's given this bullshit story about fearing losing her, the entire time you can see Nicole Kidman's reaction, and it doesn't cut to close-ups to her. It doesn't like do this thing where it really wants to like emphasize it and go into it. It just sits there in a nice, you know, it's handheld. It's a little bit shaky, but it's just a very natural two-shot, and it just lets you soak in the performance and see both of them throughout almost the entire scene, and it's very effective. I really like that. And you know, the scene just really stuck out to me on a number of levels, and like I was shocked that he admitted anything. I was shocked at the reactions, and sadly, and his admission kind of works where Celeste's demeanor changes a little bit from "this is bullshit," like I'm almost ready to like have an outburst and fight back, to I'm going to go along with his story, back him up, take some of the blame, and make it feel more mutual. And maybe this is, you know, maybe it's not just about herself, maybe it's about trying to save the marriage for the kids, maybe it's about a lot of things, but the scene was really effective in that, and I've been enjoying kind of like digesting their characters, and their final scene in the episode, you know, he comes in and asks, like, you know, how are you feeling? And she's both sad and happy. She's sad because she's worried her husband doubts her love, but she's happy because for the first time she's hopeful. And he plays some music and says, will you dance with me? And they dance, and that's kind of their final part of the episode. Again, like I feel uneasy about this final scene, because I don't trust them. I don't trust that this is over, or that he won't just slide into snapping, that he won't just become angry again at the first sign of trouble. I genuinely think it feels less like someone trying to patch up their marriage and atone for what they've done, and more like someone just trying to control the narrative just enough, you know, to accept some of the truth and the blame, just enough so it looks like he's trying, but without the real kind of dedication to it. Like, as much as he's clearly very ashamed to admit what he's doing in the therapy scene, he never kind of flat out like gets to the idea that he's ashamed of it, or you know, he's just kind of awkward about it. And you can very much read it as, okay, he's awkward because he's ashamed, or he's awkward because like he knows he has to play it safe, because he knows he has to sort of do it this way. I don't know, like it's a fascinating relationship between the two of them. It's toxic and like doomed, but I'm fascinated. Like I will be shocked if they're still together and trying to be a couple at the end of this season. I will be, and obviously people know that, like, because season 1 aired a long time ago now. Don't spoil it, but I'll be shocked if they're still, like, whether or not he ends up being the murdered one or the killer, and whether or not Celeste just has enough and like leaves him. I don't know which is going to happen, but so like the thought of them getting into season 2 still trying to be like pretend that this is working does not feel like it's happening to me. But you know, we'll see. Maybe I'm completely wrong. It's entirely possible. It's entirely possible. From there, let's go to Jane. I talked, you know, a little bit about her last time, not a lot because she didn't have as much last time, but we did get some big scenes with her in this episode. Her and Ziggy, and the conception of Ziggy specifically. I was actually a little surprised again that this came so early on in the show. I was expecting this to be maybe drawn out for a little bit longer, but you know, things are going well with Ziggy. He does well at T-ball. She's all happy. She goes on the dancing and ice. Everyone seems to be having a good time. She does get a little bit frustrated because she loses the hippo, which Ziggy has for the night. This thing's been with the school for 10 years, as we hear, and you know, she's worried that Ziggy will get blamed for it. Which I thought, if I have a complaint about the episode, I thought it was odd not to actually get like a scene of some kind of a reaction. The only thing we get is one of the interview snippets of someone saying that hippo had been with the school for 10 years. You know, all judgmental, but it felt weird not to get a scene of having to tell the teacher, or just a simple shot, not even like a full scene, just like an instant reaction to it, I guess, to see if like Jane was expecting, does this feel like he's getting blamed for it again? But it all kind of boils up because after T-ball, he used to finish his family tree project, because we see Chloe working hers at one point with Madeline, and she's panicking. She thought it was like another week, but it's tomorrow. She's freaking out. She calls Madeline. Madeline comes over the board and all the arts and crafts stuff they need, and they're going to do a family tree. And It's funny, actually. I thought like they were going to sell it as she was putting it off because she didn't want to get into who Ziggy's father was. And maybe there's still an extent of that. But more so that she has just generally forgotten it. Because she doesn't seem that worried when she's actually starting to do it. It's not until Ziggy really starts asking questions and wants to put the father on the tree. And all the kids will have them there. Like, he's going to be the only one without a father. And she's like, no, everyone's family tree is different. You know, like, you don't have to. And he gets really upset and he yells at her and says, you know, what's his name for Christ's sake? And she sends him to his room. He has a bit old. This is a really awkward scene to watch because you just watch it from Madeline's perspective, and Madeline's just kind of like sitting there quietly, just kind of awkward, like, oh, I won't say anything. Nope. But this does lead to Jane opening up to Madeline, and we find out it's the first time she's ever told this story. She's not even told this to her parents or anyone else. And we get the full context, or at least a lot more context to the night of the conception. And it is very much sexual assault. Although I did notice that she never outright called it that or called it rape. She never really quite used those words. And I think that's also just a, you know, coping mechanism. I think it maybe ties into kind of Celeste a little bit in the idea of admitting the trauma that she's been through. But she tells the story of how she met him in a bar. They were both kind of into each other. They were kind of drunk, but he changed when they got to a hotel room. And he got very aggressive, pinned her down. And the direction here is fantastic because it does this thing where it mostly just shows you the aftermath, or the prelude and the aftermath. But when she sits in the bathroom, like, all, you know, the dress is like sort of half torn off her. She's sitting there all kind of, she looks over and she can see it happening on the bed. And it's kind of like her kind of coming to terms in that moment. Because the final shot of the episode, of course, is her, you know, after walking down the beach, just taking off her dress and just walking into the ocean in an effort to cleanse herself, you know, because she feels disgusting, she feels vile, she feels violated. And it's really well shot. You really feel her emotions in the scene. And she's describing all this to Madeline, and she asks, you know, have you been to therapy and so on. But so it does solidify a couple of things that I've been thinking about, you know, throughout the first two episodes. Is that, you know, is she worried that Ziggy might be like his father? You know, those little fearful moments where he's kind of scary in her dreams. Like, is that based on who his father is? It turns out it seems to be. That's why she has a gun in her dresser, and why she's so terrified of someone. In fact, there's an excellent scene in this episode after this explanation of, it seems like someone's breaking in, someone's kicking in the door and smashing in the window, and she can't get the gun out, and she just gets it out in time, and then it turns out no one's there. Nothing's been at the window. This is just her. This is just her being paranoid and scared. This is never quite leaving her, and that's, you know, that's one of the things that she says to Madeline, is that she thought she was over it. She thought she got past it and moved on with her life and wanted to, you know, just, you know, give Ziggy a good life and just leave it at that. But it's never really going to leave her. And I think like her paranoia and her being terrified that he might come back someday is a testament to that statement. But you feel the fear, you feel the dread. The direction really lets you feel what she feels inside. As it should. That's the point, right? That's the point, is to be able to empathize in a way that you couldn't otherwise. And it's terrifying. It's a scary scene. And even if you, because I mean, I pretty much guessed it wasn't real, like almost immediately, but it doesn't matter. Like, you still feel the fear, you feel the adrenaline, you feel the rush before he gets in. So now her stuff was really big this episode, and you know, and there's a lot of nice little contextual, or little not contextual, but textured, like, links between things. Like, of course, we have her who's a victim of sexual assault, and then Celeste who's kind of like denying that she's going through that herself, and not the exact same situation, of course, but a lot of parallels can be made. And then you have the other thing here talking about how, like, you know, the father's never around for Ziggy, like, you know, he's just not there, and that you know, ties into a little bit of what Madeline's going through with, you know, Nathan having left her when Abby was young, and dealing with like the changes now Abby seems to be gravitating towards her father more, and that doesn't feel right. Now, of course, Nathan doesn't seem like he was ever as bad as this mystery man in Jane's life, you know, this attacker, but it's definitely bringing up these feelings, and that obviously leads into her story this episode. And you know, it's why on the way home from this meeting, Madeline breaks down in the car and starts crying, is that Abby needs to leave the house. She has a talk with her guidance counselor, Nicole and Madeline, and she tells her that she has to go and live with Dad because she feels too pressured being around Madeline. And it's funny because it actually it basically proves something I was like talking about last episode. I was talking about how a lot of what the parents do with their kids is they kind of are using their kids to get through their own shit, their own trauma, to be successful, to be whatever. And in Madeline's case, it's she wants her kids to be successful, and the idea that partly why she hates Renata is one, that she's kind of like Renata in a lot of ways, she doesn't want to admit. But two, the idea that she could have had this life, she could have been this successful, but maybe that was something that she couldn't get once she was left behind with a kid and no father to help her. So that was maybe a choice that was taken away from her in her life. And I think it's interesting that with Abby, unlike all the other kids, we get someone at an age where we can see the effect of what that maybe does to the kid by the time they get to an age where they're starting to be a bit more adult-like and they're starting to be a bit more mature and think about things. And it seems like she's picked up on it. She says it in the scene. Sometimes I think you're forcing me to be what you wanted to be and not what I necessarily want to be or feel like. And no one seems to care what I feel or think, that kind of thing. She has a conversation with Ed about it. She talks to Madeline here in this scene with the therapist or the guidance counselor. And again, even like them sitting talking to a guidance counselor nicely mirrors the couple talking to a therapist. There's some nice little parallels in some of the setups between the different plot lines this episode. And this is hard for her to hear. She doesn't like it. And Abby's leaving. There's a great little moment actually when Abby's like clearing her room out and she's taking photos off the wall, where Chloe comes in, and there's not enough Chloe in this episode. That's my mama complaint. But she's like, "Oh, Chloe, you try to get my room," and Chloe's like, "Yeah, can I have it?" And she's like, "Nah." And there's a moment there where it cuts to Madeline, and she gives this little smile, and it was a really nice little human moment because it was basically Abby saying that she couldn't have a room implied that she intended on coming back in some capacity, and that like gave her a little happy moment, and it was just a little human thing, but between everything else. And it's fascinating to me to kind of explore that even with the best of intentions, because I don't think Madeline and some of the other moms have bad intentions for their kids. It's not like they're being awful with the intent of harming the children, or it's more that they don't realize that putting this pressure on them or that they're rubbing off on their kids or whatever. It's kind of this is the dangers of driving your kid away because you do kind of try to live through them, essentially. And Abby's at the age now where it's become apparent and she's aware of it, and and maybe this makes things better for Chloe. Maybe Madeline will learn things here and treat Chloe a little bit differently. Really good laugh in this episode though. After the scene with the guidance counselor, she's with Ed and she's all upset. He's hugging her from behind and looking at the ocean because that's what they do a lot in this show. And she says, I bet she wouldn't move out if she knew I had cancer. And Ed says, but you don't have cancer. And Madeline says, I'd be willing to get it. That was a really funny line. It's a funny line, but there's some truth in not in that she's willing to have cancer necessarily, or maybe that is true, but there's truth in this as much as it's a little joke. It kind of shows again how she's willing to kind of almost manipulate things to her own end, even though this one is a joke and it's kind of sweet in its own way. It kind of does extend from how she thinks about situations, and maybe why she's so heated with Renata. Because I think her and Renata are actually a lot alike. They're just separated by where their lives took them, and that's why they hate each other so much, is because they're so alike. And speaking of Renata, I love that at the start of the episode when she's talking to her daughter, who I thought was Annabelle, but it turns out it's Amabelle. I was like, oh, was I hearing that right? But she's really, she's talking to Amabelle, and I was like, oh, why is Chloe not coming? I love that Renata phrases it as a conflict. She says she has a conflict. Again, it's not a word you would use with 6-year-olds, but that's kind of one of the little humorous things I like about this show is how they apply the adult language to the kids a little bit. And she has to explain it, and but she goes groveling, and I think this is one of the things that this episode does a little bit to humanize Renata a chunk, because she phones Madeline basically to grovel and say, hey, can Chloe and the other kids come to the party? Like, I will send them all to Disneyland. I'll give them VIP passes. I will pay for all of it. I will do all of this stuff very soon. Just, you know, please don't upset my girl on her birthday. And Madeline, being the spiteful person that she is like, nah, sorry. And it gets heated again, of course. And she says something like, you know, you're done in this town. She throws the phone in the water. And I think for Renata, there's this like odd realization. It kind of goes back to what her husband Gordon said in the first episode about, you know, like, you know, she wants success, but there's a danger of having too much of it. And like, I think Renata is kind of like worried or realizing that, like, she is very successful financially and she is very powerful and she can do all these things, but it doesn't necessarily make people like her. And I think, you know, she's trying to make people like her and it's not happening. And it kind of leads to the scene where she goes to Gordon's office and says, you know, if I become someone that everyone hates, like, am I someone that no one actually thinks is fun and likes and wants to be around? Because even though it's very endearing how much she wants to fight for her daughter, she does it through money. She does it through just trying to buy her everything, and making that, you know, like, don't be upset, dear. I'll get you a second clown. I'll get you another big thing at your birthday. I'll get you this. I'll get you that. It's all just buying things. Which, again, if you wanted to do parallels to other plots, it's not, obviously it's a very big difference to this, but just to connect that to Celeste and Perry, where Perry's just buying necklaces to make up for things. Again, he's trying to solve emotional problems with money, which doesn't work. Well, at least not usually. It's not healthy. And yeah, and they end up having sex in his office. He kind of like makes her feel desired, and she even says that later on. And says, "Oh, let's be impulsive. Let's go have sex in the bathroom." And what I thought was amusing about this, actually, because she says, "Oh, you know, you want to have sex a lot, but you wanted me today. You made me feel desired." And I actually chuckled a little bit because I'm not entirely convinced that he did, because one of the little jokey scenes at the birthday party is all the interviews talking about how Bonnie, Nathan's wife, was dancing at the party and how all the dads were staring, and Gordon was clearly staring quite a bit during that scene. So I'm not convinced that he wasn't thinking about Bonnie. It's certainly in my head. Speaking of Nathan, there's a little bit more of Nathan thinking Ed wants to beat him up and pointing out that he's kind of staring at him, because he's trying to make peace with Madeline about Abby moving. He's like, oh, hey, this wasn't my idea. I didn't talk her into this. This was just her. And Bonnie actually hugs Madeline and says, I won't try to take your place as her mother. You are her mother, you know that. And she hugs her. And Madeline looks so awkward. You know, her hands just stay down at her sides as Bonnie hugs her. And it's just, I don't know. It was an amusing scene. But like, it finds humor in a lot of these things, but obviously there's a lot of darker touches to a lot of it as well. But a lot of good character work again in this episode, and a lot of emotional. Because I almost think Madeline is going to be more raring to go and fight than she has been, because of now what's happened with Abby. Like, this is just going to give her more fuel to fight. This is going to, you know, she won't back down now from anything. I don't think, not for a while, because of this. So I'm looking forward to that. And it's also worth mentioning they set up the dance that we saw in the sort of the flash forward part of the first episode, this Audrey Hepburn Elvis thing that they're going to, where the murder seems to take place. So we're building up to that stuff too. So no, so a very good episode. Episode 3, probably the best episode yet. Therapy scene was fantastic, but there was a lot of great scenes in this one. So yeah, let me know what you think of the episode in the comments below. Like and subscribe, all that stuff. Get me on the Twitters at mailed_fuzz for channel updates. If you want to support the show and the channel and everything we do here, you can head over to patreon.com/mailfuzztv, where you can support us for as little as $1 and get some bonuses, get some extras and some early stuff. But otherwise, that is us. So thank you once again for watching or listening. I always appreciate it. Keep watching TV, guys. Have you got any vanilla?